Joining us today is Braden Eads. He's a seasoned customer success leader and keynote speaker with over a decade of experience in scaling teams, optimizing customer engagement, and driving retention strategies for Fortune 500 companies. Braden, thank you so much for joining us. We're thrilled to have you here today.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here. That's quite the introduction. I should put that on my LinkedIn. That was going on.
It's an additional service we offer, and
Yep.
it costs you twice as much as it cost you to do this, which was free, so you're still free.
0 times 0.
Wonder exactly. So just want to get right into the questions. And so people
Sure.
that are listening to this can start to understand who you are as an employee and what your thoughts are. So just starting it off, what moment in your career has taught you the most?
This is such a great question. When I think about this question, there's one that always comes top to mind, and it was my first time as a manager. And I was in deep into one-on-ones with people and also driving KPIs, right? So it's people management versus doing things for the business. And I got really good at asking the right questions, I think, for the business side of things. And then at the end of every one-on-one, I would always tack on the questions like, what else is going on? Like, how are you? And stuff like that. And I had this high-performing CSM to me out of left field say, "Hey, I'm leaving." And I'm like, what happened?" I value so much being able to create a safe culture where you can just tell me anything you want. And that's really, really important to me. And I failed here. Like, why we haven't even not had a conversation. And he gave me the most candid, wonderful feedback of my entire career thus far, where he says, "Braden, I can't tell you what's going on in the 5 minutes we have left." And I was like, "Oh, man."
Hmm.
So it changed my entire perspective as a people leader, where it's like people come first always.
Hmm.
And since then, as a leader, every one-on-one I've always ever started, it's like, tell me, I like to say, "How are you?" Right? Which is what we always do is in the Western culture. And then I say, "How are you really?"
Okay.
Right? And that extra question, I'm trying to create this transparent culture of just like, please just tell me honestly, like how things are going. And I want to make sure to respond in the most supportive way possible. So probably one of the most influential, life-changing kind of experiences, not just in that applies to real life as well, but it was a very pivotal moment of my career. So
It's a great point.
thanks.
Okay. So, Braden, when your colleagues or team members describe you, what are three words that they would use to
Oh,
describe
come
you?
on. Really? Like,
Mhm.
this is
Yeah.
not a fair question because I know normally after questions, I like to say, "That's a great question." I don't like this question. Only because like I can't speak for my teammates. I'm gonna put words in their mouth and like to my own horn and things like that. If I had to answer this question though, I like to take examples of what they've actually said. But based off of my assumptions, I would say empathetic, collaborative, and helper. I like to be the helper. In terms of empathy, I've done a ton of work in terms of, I don't know. I feel like the core advantage of being a customer success manager is when you can be able to provide empathy. I remember specifically through COVID, I would call, we would put on pause payments for people. We worked with brick and mortar stores at the time. And I remember having the conversation with this man who had closed his store. I gave him some options, and with no emotion in his tone, he says, "Send me the collections. There's nothing to collect." You know, and I was
Wow.
just heartbroken, right? And I was just like, these are people with real businesses. I'm doing a transactional thing where I'm going through a spreadsheet and labeling who's paused on payment, who's returned to payment, and how we can help these people. But empathy, I think, is so important to me. You're working with real humans and having real human relationships and conversations rather in a business to business environment, and that empathy is super important. And then collaboration is a must in customer success. You're working across many teams, and you say when you're working, especially with bigger clients, you have an account team. You're serving as the point of, like, you're the captain of the team to run quarterback. All these different analogies I'm using to make sure to help that customer be successful, and am not afraid to ask a chief whatever officer to get what the customer needs to get taken care of. So that collaboration is really, really important to me. There's been times where when I've worked in office, and if people aren't getting back to me, I'm going to show up at your desk. Like, like, like that's how we need to work. And I'm going to do what it takes to make sure things get done. And then as a helper, I love the phrase, like, always look for the helpers. No, I love the phrase, no problem is somebody else's problem to solve. If you have the capacity to solve a problem, it's not somebody else's job, right? You can step in and be a helper.
Excellent. That's what
Mhm.
we're all about, helping people. So
Mhm.
Yeah.
well,
You
outside
are.
of your professional achievements, what passion project or personal interest has taught you skills that make you better at what you do?
Oh, so this is a funny one. I am a theater junkie. Is that crazy?
Not at all.
So, not at all. I do keynote speaking, and if you haven't heard this before, if you want to learn how to write a speech, you take a public speaking class. If you want to learn how to give a speech, do theater. Right. And that's, I think people don't tie those two things together. And so I if you look hard enough for me online, I have some music out there that's me singing in my closet. In Utah, I was a member of the Tabernacle Choir on Temple Square, which means I sang at President Trump's inauguration the first time. This huge music and performance go hand in hand, I think, with being able to carry a confident presence when presenting to executive stakeholders. And those two skill sets are so wildly different in context, but so similar in the skills you need to be captivating to be able to work an audience and different things like that. So my wife and I, we love music. We've done like concerts together. Music is a huge part of our household and being able to perform and work an audience. And I think that goes absolutely hand in hand with that presentation skill set for customer success.
Thoroughly
I just
agree.
want to point out, though, one thing, and that is that,
Yeah.
Tara, you're swearing like a sailor, and he's one of the Mormon Tabernacle Choir people. So,
Oh.
Listen, no, Joe, I told you I would do it only
okay.
on mute.
I dare you to offend me though.
Mm-mm.
I dare
Oh, don't go there.
So-
She was
you. Yeah.
Paul and I started a nonprofit theater
Oh,
company
nice.
way back in the
No
day.
way.
So yeah, we had a
had a
Great.
great little run.
so we're theater
Mhm.
junkies too.
Yes.
Though I will say that my favorite show we produced Spamalot.
No way.
So like not something for the Mormon stage, but definitely really fun.
Oh, that is a fun one.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah.
So,
So back to you.
Yes.
can you tell me about a mentor?
A mentor. So this one is an interesting one because when I think of my life professionally within the customer success realm, there's too many to name, right? Where Tyler Richards comes up as one, Chris Nielsen, Josh Alvord, all these people who were my leaders and people that I would go. I love the phrase "I'd go to war for you." You
Mhm.
know, my most recent chief customer officer, Frank. It's just like if you asked me to go to war, I'd do that with you. But one that comes to mind, I think that's most prominent for me. Her name is Julie Lee. And she's the person that helped me pull the trigger on my keynote speaking business. Something I've wanted to do for 10 years, right? And I'm sitting there and I'm like, talk to one guy and he's like, well, do you want to be at the birth of your child? And I was like, well, of course I do. He says, this life isn't for you. You're going to be on the road 3 times. I was like, okay, well, I want to be a dad that's home. Number one. And number two, it's like, I haven't climbed Mount Everest with no legs. I've never bought and sold a business for $50 million by the time I was 26. Like, who's going to buy me? Like that. So I sat and spun my wheels forever. And Julie Lee's post just came up on LinkedIn. I followed her and just started watching her and understood the background of her. Julie also hasn't done any of those things either, but has a successful keynote speaking business. I was like, okay, I want to get to know you. So one day I finally had the courage to reach out to her and I was just like, hey, tell me about your journey. And we talked, and at the end of our first conversation, the energy I felt for this dream of mine to be a keynote speaker, like my body was shaking because I was like, I'm so excited. I'm going to do this. I'm actually finally going to do this now. And it was Julie who finally said, like, based off of our conversation and the energy you have, you got this. If you can tell stories and be funny, like you're going to be better than 90% of the keynote speakers out there who have built businesses because they don't know how to be energetic and captivate an audience. And so we've met consistently over the last year to build my website, to put a keynote speaking business together, to talk about the writing, the format of that. And she, in every way, shape, and form, has been that mentor to help me go from 0 to 1 for a 10-year-old dream that I've had forever. So Julie Lee, shout out. She's awesome.
That's great. So now we're moving into the what book or podcast, but it seems like maybe she might have been that too. But is there another book or podcast that has influenced you?
100%. This one's very personal. Hello, my name is Braden, and I am a nice guy in recovery. So if a nice guy, so the book is called No More Mr. Nice Guy, where I've had nice guy syndrome, which comes across, right? Which sounds weird. You're like, well, nice guys finish last. Nice guys are the good guys, right? Like And there's a lot of negative things that come with nice guy syndrome. And if this sounds like you, there's some work that needs to be done where, for instance, are you seeking approval, where you're craving external validation or approval from others? Are you avoiding conflict where you're not sharing what's truly on your heart because you don't want to stir the pot or anything like that? Are you fearing rejection? Do you have this deep fear of rejection that you're like withholding your own talents and abilities? Do you have trouble expressing your actual needs where you'd rather just like say, I just want to be seen as the nice guy, so I'm not actually going to express what I need right now, but I still actually need that? Are you desiring to be like different from men that you dislike? And then I think the biggest one is are you being dishonest? Are you having trouble disclosing times where you didn't show up the way you wanted to? And you just, I think the biggest thing is nice guys cannot be found out. You do so much to try not to be found out rather than showing up authentically and really disclosing when you're just like, listen, I did this thing and I'm not proud of it. Like, and it's all of those things are me, growing up and different things. And so I finally was suggested this book called No More Mr. Nice Guy. And it was just like, it's like reading your soul where you're like, this is scary. How does this man know so much about my soul when I haven't said anything to him? It's scary. But then you get these tools to be able to show up authentically as a real human being. And that has been a pivotal book that I've read to change my life personally. No More Mr. Nice Guy.
Wow.
Excellent. If you could spend a day learning anything from anyone, living or historical, who would that be and why?
Now that we've gotten the Mormon thing out, it's pretty cliche. Jesus, right? I think regardless of your religion, your faith, or whether you're Christian or something like that, you can look at Jesus objectively in the records of history. And I'm curious for you all, have you ever met somebody who, when they interacted with you, you felt like the most important person in their life in that moment? And it's remarkable
Mhm.
Yeah.
when
Yeah.
you meet those people. And I'm like, how do you arrive at that place? How do you arrive at that place to care so deeply about individuals in that interaction where it's authentic, it's not fake, and it's real? And I'm like, man, if I could just like walk on the road of Damascus with Jesus and just like have a conversation with him to understand that part of life and kind of there I have a lot of mixed feelings about just religion in general and on a religious journey of my own. But if you were to truly ask me what my faith is, it's to love God and to love my neighbor. Like that's ultimately where I think that hits most for me. And you can get into all of the other messy parts of faith and religion, but that's one that really rings true for me. And so if I could sit down with anyone to learn to love my neighbor in the way that Jesus did, like that, I want to learn that. I think that's really powerful.
The way you describe that, anybody that's listening to this, I'd like each of you to think about what you said about, do you know anybody in your life that can make you feel that way? And just think about it for a second, because for me, there was one person that immediately popped into my head, and it was so crystal clear. So, JT Meridian, wherever you are, I'm going to have to somehow get this to you because
Oh,
he is a dear friend of ours. But he is that kind of person that no matter who he meets, you walk away feeling like you were the most important person to him at that
Right?
moment. And it's
I know where he got it from though, because
yeah.
Jim is for
His
me
his
what
father Jim was
JT.
just a
So
wonderful
his
man as
dad,
well.
you felt like nobody was in the room with you if he
Mhm.
was talking to you.
So
It's
great,
beautiful.
great people. But if you do take a minute and think of that, do me a favor, just reach out to that person and say, I was thinking about you the other day. Just let them know you were thinking about them. So enough of the rant, but I love what you were saying there. And for me, that really resonates. And I'm going to have to reach out to JT after this.
That's awesome.
But back to you. What do
Yeah.
you see as the future of your industry?
This is, again, a fantastic question because there's this little thing that's called artificial intelligence that is starting
What's
to
that?
create. I know. I've never heard of it. And I had one of the most fascinating conversations with the senior director at Salesforce. Salesforce is moving towards what's called Agentforce, which is that first stop shop of agentizing is this new kind of term that's coming up for AI that's coming out. And what boggles my mind is he said, no longer is knowledge your most valuable asset as a customer-facing individual, because now knowledge is at my fingertips. It's nuts. Like I can just like give a prompt and I'm get like it's just insane the amount of knowledge that you can have as an individual. So being able to be super skilled at knowing something is no longer a valuable asset as much creating a deep relationship. AI will never create relationships. You can do therapy with AI, which I've done. I'm like, I have this problem or this thought, and it's really good at being empathetic in using the verbiage that it does, but it's not real. It's like it's not real empathy. It's just like, oh, this is words on a screen. This isn't a real human being. And so it will never ever replace that empathy. It will never replace being able to celebrate together a win. It will never replace being able to understand and reflectively listen to somebody that's an issue. It's all just zeros and ones. And so the future of my industry and customer success, it's being able to get superpowered with AI in terms of being able to resolve problems and to give information quickly, right? That's going to be like a superpower. But there's going to be a much larger focus on, can you human relationships and connect with them from person to person? Is that something you can do? Because that's something that AI can't do. So that's where I see the future of that skill set, and the future of the value that you can bring is not just being able to solve problems, but be able to create actual real relationships. I say this in part of my keynote. There's a Harvard business study that was done in terms of evaluating customer satisfaction and emotional connection. And if you're able to create an emotional connection with a consumer to a product, they are 3 times more likely to stick with that brand or product customer satisfaction. Right? So that's 3 times more likely if you can create an emotional connection with them in that product. So when I talk to people and coach them around customer success, I say I use a product, Nike, right? Or something like that, right? It's really, really easy to detach and remove a relationship from Nike. However, it's very, very difficult to tell Braden, I no longer want to use your product. It's a name versus a product. And if you can create that relationship, it's much different when I have that. Hey, essentially what it comes down to, I'm in a renewal-based subscription model business in SaaS a lot. And when I've arrived at that place with a customer, what that means is we have that conversation of like, hey, we're concerned about renewing with you guys. And it happens much earlier on because we actually want to collaborate rather than just say, hey, got to pull the plug, see whatever officer said so.
It's fascinating that you brought that up. And I think it's really something that everybody is starting to grapple with, specifically with AI. I know we just did a podcast a couple of months ago with a woman whose product line includes AI as part of their communication software. And the whole point behind it is to take some of the more mundane or routine tasks off of the front desk staff at a hotel so that they can be focused on the person standing in front of them. Create that human interaction, that human relationship where somebody looking for parking lot directions can get the AI tool, but the person that's standing there is going to get the absolute best relationship and experience. So I think you're right on the money. I think it's going to be fascinating to see where the industry goes and how we're able to evolve and to grow skill sets in that area. So this has been a great conversation. How should people reach out to you?
This is a great question. LinkedIn is a great place to find me. So just Braden Eads on LinkedIn, you can search me, or my keynote speaking website is bradeneads.com. Really simple, but those are 2 fantastic ways to get in touch.
We will do that. So thanks so much for joining us today. And anybody that wants to reach out, if you didn't get that, it'll be in the show notes. So happy to connect you directly with Braden. Thanks so much, Braden.
Thanks for having me. Thanks, everyone.
MTMG, guidance that empowers.